Welcome to the channel, my friends. Tonight I want to share a terrifying true story from the back roads of Texas, one that left me shaken to my core. Imagine being stranded on a dark, empty highway in the middle of the night and realizing the person who stops to help you may have something far more sinister in mind. This isn't fiction. This actually happened to me. So turn off the lights, get comfortable, and listen closely, because this is how I learned the hard way that not everyone who stops is there to help. This happened way back in 2005. I was 18 years old, living in Uvalde, Texas, a small, low-income town where people knew each other's business, and old trucks lined driveways like rusted-out memories. It was the kind of place that felt frozen in time. A town where nothing much ever happened, until it did. My parents didn't have much money, so I was attending a local community college. It wasn't glamorous, but it was affordable, and that was all that mattered. One of my best friends from high school, Andrew, had moved to San Antonio to attend San Antonio College. He was living just outside the city, in a small, cheap apartment, with a roommate. His girlfriend stayed there pretty often too. Since San Antonio was only about an hour and a half away, I'd visit him frequently whenever I needed a break from Uvalde. One Friday afternoon, Andrew invited me to come spend the weekend. I grabbed my keys, tossed a duffel bag into the back of my beat-up 95 Toyota pickup truck, and headed east on Route 90. That truck, man, it was a death trap. The gas gauge hadn't worked in months, so I had to keep track of my fuel using the trip mileage. I had reset it recently, but I wasn't sure how far I could go. Still, I figured I'd be fine. Spoiler alert, I wasn't. I arrived at Andrew's place by early evening. His girlfriend wasn't there that night, so the three of us, Andrew, his roommate, and I, hit up a liquor store, drank at the apartment, and then went to a dive bar that didn't care much about IDs. We stumbled back around 2 a.m., bellies full of cheap food, and I crashed on the couch. The next day didn't go quite as smoothly. Andrew and his girlfriend were having drama, loud, messy, alcohol-fueled drama. She yelled at him right in front of me, making the air thick with tension. I felt like an intruder, trapped in someone else's toxic relationship. I didn't drink much that day. In fact, as night fell and the shouting got worse, I decided I was done. I packed up and told Andrew I was heading home. It was just before midnight when I pulled out onto Route 90, the highway stretching out into blackness ahead. No streetlights, no cars, just the occasional flicker of road reflectors and the soft hum of my tires against the pavement. I was maybe 45 minutes outside of San Antonio, flying as fast as my truck would allow, when the engine began to sputter. My stomach dropped. I'd forgotten to fill up. I coasted to the side of the road, just as the truck choked and died. I turned the key. Nothing. Silence. I tried again. Still nothing. I grabbed my old Nokia phone and checked for signal. Of course, no service. Middle of nowhere. No gas. No phone. I was completely on my own. I turned on my hazard lights and waited, hoping some kind soul would pull over. After 30 minutes, a car approached. I jumped out and waved like a maniac, but it zoomed past. Another car passed 10 minutes later. Same thing. No one wanted to stop for some random guy in the dead of night. Finally, I gave up. I climbed back into the cab, turned off the key to save the battery, and reclined my seat. I figured I'd wait until sunrise and hike to the nearest gas station if no one helped. But sleep didn't come easy. I kept hearing faint sounds in the distance, twigs snapping, brush rustling, the occasional car in the distance. Then, just as I was drifting off, I heard something that jolted me awake, a car door slamming, right behind me. I sat up and glanced in the rearview mirror. A large pickup truck was parked behind mine, with its headlights off. I turned and looked closer. No one was in the driver's seat. No one outside either. I stepped out of my truck and called, "Hello, you okay?" No response. I cautiously walked toward the other truck to see if someone was there. Nothing. Empty. Maybe someone was taking a leak in the woods. I returned to my truck and locked the doors. Then came a knock on my window. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Standing outside was a tall man, grinning like he knew something I didn't. "Hey buddy," he said in a slow drawl. "Need a hand?" I cracked the window. "Yeah, ran out of gas." He smiled wider. "That's quite the predicament. Step out and give me a hand with this real quick." I thought he meant a gas can, so I stepped out, but instead of walking to his truck, he just stood there, towering over me. "Empty your pockets," he said. I froze. This wasn't help. This was a setup. Without a word, I bolted toward the woods. I'm not big, but I was fast. I sprinted and weaved through the trees, ducking under branches, kicking up dust. I didn't look back until I was deep inside. That's when I heard him yelling, "I'll kill you, you piece of..." I don't know how long I stayed there, but I didn't move all night. At dawn, I finally crept back to the highway. His truck was gone. Mine had both doors wide open. He'd gone through everything, emptied the glove box, taken my flannel hoodie, maybe thinking something valuable was inside. My wallet and phone were still in my pocket though. Thank God. Eventually a kind man in a sedan stopped and offered help. He drove me to the nearest gas station. I filled a small container, and he brought me back. I got just enough gas to limp the truck to a full service station. After that, I went straight home. It took me a long time to fully process what happened. That night could have ended so much worse. But it taught me something. In this world, there are people who will prey on your weakest moments, and people who will help you in your darkest hours. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the story, or have one of your own, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Stay safe out there. Not every helping hand comes with good intention. When I was 18, I thought I knew everything. I had just started college, living away from home, thinking I was grown. But truth be told, I was immature, reckless, and had no business acting the way I did, especially behind the wheel. I used to be the kind of driver people hated. Aggressive, impatient, honking at slow drivers, tailgating anyone who even slightly inconvenienced me. It embarrasses me now to think about it, but back then I thought I was invincible. That confidence bled into everything I did, including how I handled my car. I drove an old Mazda 3 that I treated like it was disposable. I constantly pushed it to the limit, braking late, flooring it constantly, and always letting the tank run on empty. I had this dumb belief that even when the gas gauge hit E, I still had 30 miles left. My friends would always give me crap for it, and I'd just shrug it off. That winter break I learned how wrong I was. The fall semester had just ended, and like every other student on campus, I was ready to be home. Most of my friends had already left earlier that day, but I hated traffic with a passion, so I waited until after 9 p.m. to hit the road, hoping the highways would be empty. It was a 5-hour drive home, sometimes longer depending on traffic, but if I left late, I could sometimes make it in 3. That night the weather was cold but clear, and I had a good playlist ready. I felt good as I drove out of the campus town and onto the interstate. About an hour into my trip, I noticed the gas light come on. No big deal, I thought. I'd seen it happen dozens of times before. I figured I'd stop at the next exit with a station, but the exits in that stretch of the interstate were few and far between, and stupidly, I didn't bother to check my GPS. I just kept driving, waiting for a sign. Then the car started to jerk slightly. A couple of faint sputtering sounds came from under the hood. My heart sank. I panicked and took the next exit, hoping a station was nearby. But as I rolled down the ramp, I realized there were no lights, just pitch black woods stretching out on either side. No buildings, no gas signs. The road felt abandoned, swallowed by the night. I blew past a stop sign at the end of the ramp, desperately trying to keep what little momentum I had. I turned sharply onto the intersecting road, another desolate stretch flanked by thick trees. A few moments later, the engine gave one final gasp before it completely shut off. I was stranded in the middle of nowhere, with no gas and no cell service. I had T-Mobile. Enough said. I tried calling 911 anyway, but of course the call wouldn't go through. That's when the fear really started to creep in. I was an 18-year-old girl alone in the dark, completely cut off from help. I turned on my hazards and just waited, praying someone would drive by. After what felt like an eternity, headlights finally appeared in the distance. I flashed mine frantically, and to my relief, the car slowed past me, then made a U-turn and parked behind me. A man got out. He looked to be in his late 40s, bald with glasses and a dark hoodie. He walked up to my window and I cracked it slightly. He asked if I was okay, and I told him I had run out of gas. He nodded and offered to drive me to a gas station. I hesitated. Everything about this situation felt like a warning sign, but I had no options. My phone was useless, and I couldn't just stay there all night. So I locked my car, grabbed my purse, and followed him to his vehicle. It was a black Honda older model, and the second I got inside, a foul metallic smell hit my nose. Not rotten, exactly, more like old pennies and wet cloth. I couldn't quite place it. I told myself maybe it was a leaky oil container in the trunk, or something. We started driving. He made conversation, basic stuff. Where I was from, what school I went to. I answered vaguely, trying not to reveal too much. He said he lived nearby and that this area never saw traffic. I noticed the road we were on still had no buildings, no lights, just trees and the occasional mailbox swallowed in shadow. Then I heard it. A thump. Then another. It sounded like it was coming from the trunk. At first I brushed it off as a bump in the road, but it kept happening. Thump. Then something that sounded like scratching. The man just kept talking, pretending not to notice. His voice didn't change. He didn't flinch. I, on the other hand, was frozen in place. My palms were sweating, my heart racing. I casually glanced back toward the rear seats. The noise had stopped. Eventually we entered a small town. I saw the flickering sign of a diner and a few houses. It was the first time I saw civilization since I got in his car. We came to a red light. It was quiet for a moment, and then I heard it, clear as day. A scream, muffled, guttural, coming from the trunk, followed by frantic banging. My eyes shot toward him. His head slowly turned to meet mine. His expression was calm, too calm. In one motion I unbuckled my seatbelt, yanked the door open and bolted into the street. He lunged after me, grabbing at my jacket, but I slipped away. He let go and ran to slam his passenger door shut, then sped off down the road. I sprinted to the diner, burst through the door and yelled for help. The people inside looked stunned. Someone called 911, and I finally felt a sliver of safety. The police came. I gave them every detail I could. The make and model of his car, his appearance, the road he picked me up on. They were dead serious about it. Once I mentioned the scream in the trunk, they even drove me back to my car and I was able to get AAA to bring me gas. The officers told me I did the right thing, and that they'd be searching the area for the man's vehicle. I never found out what happened after that. I don't know if they caught him. I don't know who or what was in that trunk. All I know is that I came this close to becoming another statistic. If that red light hadn't stopped us when it did, I might never have made it back home. So please trust your gut. Always look for the warning signs, and never get in a stranger's car. No matter how desperate you are, you might not get another chance. Thanks for listening. If this story gave you chills, please like, comment, and subscribe for more true horror stories. Stay safe out there. I live in Burke County, North Carolina, in the small town of Morganton. Life out here is quiet, tucked between stretches of forest and winding two-lane roads. You get your share of strange folks now and then, but nothing too threatening. My husband and I own a modest plot of land, and I work as a nurse with a rotating schedule. Sometimes days, sometimes nights. This happened on a late night, or more accurately, the early morning hours after a grueling night shift. I remember the clock on my dash, reading 3:07 a.m. My stomach was growling, my head was pounding, and I could feel the exhaustion settling into my bones. My phone battery was flashing red, and all I could think about was getting some gas and a bite to eat before driving the last stretch home. I pulled into a small 24-hour gas station, the kind that looks outdated, flickering lights, dingy tiles, and a cooler that hums too loudly. I filled up $10 worth of gas, then walked inside and grabbed a plastic-wrapped sandwich from the shelf. As I stood at the counter to pay, I noticed a man loitering near the coffee station. He wasn't shopping, he was watching me. His eyes didn't waver as I moved to the small cafe area to eat. I tried not to look paranoid, but something about him felt wrong. He eventually left, without buying a thing. I shrugged it off. I was tired, not thinking straight. After finishing the sandwich, I walked back out and finished pumping the gas. Oddly enough, the smell of gasoline seemed unusually strong, like something had spilled nearby. I didn't think much of it at the time. As I pulled out onto the dark rural road, I kept my speed slow. Those roads twist and dip unexpectedly, and I didn't trust my tired reflexes. But about 5 minutes into the drive, something strange happened. My gas gauge, which had shown a quarter tank just moments ago, suddenly dropped to empty. The low fuel light came on with a beep. Confused, I pulled over, turned off the car, and restarted it, still empty. I tried to drive a little farther, but within seconds, the engine sputtered and died. Panic rose in my chest. I was alone, on a dark road, no signal bars. My car was dead. I called my husband. Thankfully, he answered on the second ring. I asked him how my car could possibly run out of gas after I just filled up. Then I noticed it, the overwhelming stench of gasoline again. I told him what I smelled. He went quiet for a moment, then said it sounded like my car had a fuel leak. Suddenly, headlights, or rather the lack of them, a car rolled up slowly behind mine, its engine rumbling softly in the night. The driver didn't turn on their brights, they just sat there. My heart sank. I told my husband about the man from the gas station, the one who'd been watching me. His voice shifted from calm to urgent. It's possible he tampered with your car. He might have cut your fuel line. You need to get away from there, now. I didn't need more convincing. I took the keys, shut the door to kill the headlights, and ran not down the road, but off it, into the tree line. I kept my phone screen dim as I scanned for a house. Eventually I saw one at the end of a long gravel driveway. I rang the bell repeatedly. An older man finally opened the door. He looked startled, but I explained enough to get inside. I asked for an iPhone charger. He said he'd check and motioned for me to sit down in the living room. I sat there, still in my scrubs, adrenaline pumping. He called from the kitchen, offering me water. I said sure, my mouth was dry from the panic, but I caught his reflection in a mirror on the wall. He filled a glass, then dropped something into it. The faucet kept running long after the glass was full. When he handed it to me, I didn't drink it. I just pretended to. He sat down across from me and asked me to explain everything again. I told him I really just needed to charge my phone. He got up, went upstairs, and called down a minute later that he didn't have an iPhone charger, only Android. By now my phone was on 1%. I used that final bit of battery to drop a pin and send my location to my husband. Then I got up and told the man I had to leave. I walked straight out. I could feel his eyes on my back. Once outside, I sprinted back toward the road. I crept along the side, hiding in the trees. My phone had just died. I crouched there in the dark, every sound amplified. After what felt like a lifetime, I saw headlights, familiar ones. My husband's truck. I ran into the road, waving my arms. He slammed the brakes and jumped out. I collapsed into his arms, shaking, cry. I told him everything about the car, about the man with the water, about the car that followed me. We drove back to my car, and the other vehicle was gone, but the back window was shattered. Someone had broken in, but there was nothing of value to steal, just clothes, a phone charger, and a few books. My husband checked the fuel line, and sure enough, it had been cut clean through. The police were contacted, and my car was towed to the dealership. I took the next few days off. I needed them, not just to rest, but to process the sheer terror of knowing I was likely targeted, twice in one night. Once by a man who sabotaged my car and followed me into the dark, and once by another who, behind the safety of his porch light, might have tried to drug me. Some nights still, I lie awake, thinking about how close I came to being another missing person story. I trusted my instincts, and they probably saved my life. Thank you for watching. If you found this story gripping, chilling, or thought-provoking, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. Let us know what would you have done in this situation. Stay alert, stay safe, and remember, trust your gut. Until next time.